Please welcome Dan Turton.
How are you tonight? It's lovely and cool to be here, and I'm here to talk to you about calculated creativity, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. And tonight I wanted to first of all start with one of the most awesome thinkers in the planet at the moment, and that's this guy. And it's kind of funny, but it's true at the same time. We live in a world that is ever-changing and is becoming more and more diverse. It is becoming more and more globalized, and we're having to be innovative in everything that we do. And I was talking to a friend of mine, a Brazilian guy, the other day, and he was talking about how he grew up in Brazil and just the difference between here and Australia. And he went to voluntary military school. And he was saying this one right here, one of the most prestigious places in Sao Paulo. And he rocked up to the gates and he's having a look at what they do. They're giving a big tour around the facilities there. And there's guard posts all the way around and guys with machine guns on the fences just to make you feel right at home. And he was saying that they'd go through the playing fields and the ceremony fields where right in the middle of this prestigious military base has a lot of history in it. And they noticed that there was this guard post right in the middle of the fields, right next to this wooden bench. And he thought, that's a bit strange. We're surrounded by guards. We're surrounded by people who have, guns and things like that. Why would you need a guy next to a bench? So they decided they'd check it out and see how this came to happen. Long story short, because I only got 15 minutes, they found that in the early 1900s, this base was devastated by war. And they decided they'd rejuvenate the facilities and they'd renovate and make things the way it was. And it took a couple of years, and the head of the military base was doing a tour. And he came across this seat, and it was falling to pieces, and he said, we want to make this right. We want to restore this. Everything else is done. So he made the soldiers renovate the bench, and then he put a guard on it. And he said, I want you to stand by it until the paint dries. Well, 82 years went past, and this same guard, rotating shifts, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, stood guard next to this bench. And as he was telling me the story, I thought, isn't it interesting, the funny thing about structure? And structure only becomes bad when the process in which we monitor its progress is so rigid and is inflexible that we find ourselves not being able to ask the questions why. And I wondered how many times people had stood at that bench and not done anything about it or asked why they did things like that. And the great thing about business and leadership and entrepreneurship and wherever your background is tonight, the great thing about coming to a place like this is there's a sense of community. And I've worked with some great organisations who you walk through the front door and you can just tell they have a sense of community. And the reason why community is so great and the reason why we love community in organisations is it encourages engagement. And you know where you fit, you know where you belong, you know that you have a purpose to play in the organisation, and community is a really important factor. I don't know about you, but have you ever been in the shower? I'm sure you have. Ever been in the shower and you've just had the best idea on the planet? I mean, it's funny how you are washing your shampoo out of your hair and all of a sudden you have the most amazing idea on the planet. And or you remember something that you forgot about, 45 weeks ago. And the reason why that happens is because we are no longer focused on the task, that we are open to new thinking. And when we create space for us to think creatively, it's amazing what can happen. And organisations, great organisations all the way around the world are doing some phenomenal things around creating space for people to thrive. And tonight, I just want to give you a couple of key take-homes from this. The first one is create space on purpose. Create space on purpose. I'm a statistics man. I love numbers because it proves your point without having to make up a story. And a few statistics have come out recently where it says that mums on average get 27 minutes a day to themselves. Now, most mums I speak to or tell that statistic will turn around and say, I wish I had 27 minutes a day, Dan. I don't even get that. Another statistic is for fathers, for dads. And as a dad of 3, this is quite sad for me, that dads get on average 47 minutes a week of meaningful engagement with their kids. And it's just a sign of the time that we have so many focused areas in our life, that we are so task-orientated that we forget about it. And for the first time in history, just to throw in another statistic here, did you know we spend more time in digitally engaged on our laptop, on our phones and things like that than we do sleeping? It's the first time a human need has been overtaken by technology. They did this, and by the way, if you've ever played Pokemon, I hope I don't offend anyone here, but I like to watch people play Pokemon because it's hilarious. But we live in a world where the currency is all about our attention. And everywhere we look, the world is vying for our attention and what we can offer them. If the world has our attention, if the corporate world has our attention, then we are able to, it's a supply and demand market. In the US, a few years ago, there was a research, you may have heard about it. It was about bringing hip-hop artists, and no, I'm not going to start freestyling rapping, but they brought a bunch of hip-hop artists, 12 of them in, and they were going to monitor their brain. And the whole rules around this engagement was that they played a beat, the same beat, and these rappers had to freestyle rap. And they wanted to see how creative flow works when you create space. And so they did that. And the amazing thing that began to happen is that in the frontal lobe, which is responsible for our task and our risk-taking, as they begin to freestyle rap, that used to dim down, just like a light globe going out, it dimmed down. And their creative parts of their brain begin to light up like a Christmas tree. And when we focus on the problems in our life or the challenges in your business or in your organization, the funny thing about that is we are focusing on the problems. And sometimes I think as organizations, we are starting to see more and more of it come to pass. But when we focus on the problems, we're focused on the problems. If we create space for creativity to thrive, amazing things happen. When you create a sense of community, it allows people to be generous. And the reason why that happens is that the great thing about structure, which was such a bad word for so many years, structure. But the great thing about structure is that in a structured environment, I have a clear expectation as a leader of what I want out of my employees and how to engage with my employees. As a person who is in that structure, they understand where they fit, they have purpose, they belong, they understand exactly what they're meant to do. But recent studies have been coming through where we understand that in that structured environment, we are starting to see people engage outside of that structure to be generous with their work ethic. And what we're starting to see is that as we have structure that's not rigid but is flexible, that people are starting to be generous with their work ethic and with their time. And the great thing about generosity is you can't cap it. When people have a spirit of generosity in the organizations, it's something that overflows into the rest of the organization. And calculated creativity. Creativity is kind of one of those things where we think creativity is a scary word, like it's a mural on the wall or it's a nice song or whatever it may be. But creativity is just building on what already exists. And so many organizations that I go into, they want to be innovative, so they try and throw something completely out, of the mix, something they've worked on for years and just isn't working. But sometimes I think we have creativity all wrong, that we've just simply got to look at it from a different angle and understand that creativity builds on that which already exists. The second thing that I want to leave with you tonight is creativity disrupts reality. And the thing about reality is it's based on truth. And the moment that our perception has to change or is transformed because truth comes to light, we have to adjust ourselves and align with that truth, especially in organisations today, especially in the world that we live in of globalisation. And a great example of that is before we knew we could fly in a plane and get off the ground with the Wright brothers, we never knew that we could fly. It was impossible to fly. The truth was man could not fly. But the moment we took off from the ground, the moment those wings got off the ground, we found out that man could fly, and our reality had to be transformed because the truth was now changed. It's the same when we circumnavigated the world. We found out that the world was no longer flat, but it was round, it was a sphere. Our truth had to be transformed because the reality changed. Socrates was one of the greatest thinkers in human history. And he was quoted to saying that when writing was invented, that he was concerned about the ethics because he was concerned that we would no longer think for ourselves, that we'd no longer have to rely on remembering things, that we could simply write it down and our brains would actually become obsolete. And tonight I just want to encourage you. You may have come in here, no matter whether you're a startup, an entrepreneur, whether you've been in an organisation for a number of years, whatever it is, start to think calculated in your creativity. Create space for creativity to thrive, and a place where creativity is allowed to breathe. And don't rely on the shower situations for us to remember great things or for great ideas to come to our head. Whatever it is, what are you called to disrupt in your organisation? The place of leadership, what are you called to disrupt? And a great quote that I saw the other day was, creativity is the publisher of our subconscious. And calculated creativity is creating space on purpose. And in those moments where we are thinking differently, where we think curiously, we are able to see realities change in our life. And the key is, we don't wait for someone else to do it in our business or in our competition, that we take the steps to make sure that we are the ones who move forward. And when I was first starting out in business, I started my first business when I was 18. And when I was first starting out, I had some great piece of advice that was given to me, and that was, start where you are. Use what you have and do what you can. And so often we look and we wait for resources to come into our lives and come into our business, and we look for the opportunities to grow. But sometimes we've just got to start where we are, use what we have, and do what we can. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.